Welcome back to the Leafscast, where, boys, we got a lot to get into. Free agency has come and gone, basically. The draft.
They did a whole summer worth of work in about 3 hours.
It is funny how just the way that it all goes, like, the Stanley Cup is awarded, the draft happens, and free agency happens, all in the span of, like, 7 days, and then there's going to be 2 months where absolutely nothing happens. Like, why do they have such a rush here?
Oh, not nothing. You got development camp about to go underway. They will be some young boys in Leaf sweaters skating around, I don't know, somewhere in North America. Hockey is back. We are back, baby.
I don't know if you can say hockey's back when it's like the first day of the off season. If there's ever a time where hockey is not back, this is it.
So let's get into it. So, free agency, Canada Day, Monday. You guys have a nice Canada Day?
We did. We were hanging out with your brother.
We call it John Tavares Day here.
Still?
In honor of, what was it, 6 years ago now?
We've had a lot of memorable... Well, and before John Tavares Day, it was Phil Kessel gets traded away day. Right? Wasn't that on Canada Day?
Or David Clarkson Day.
Was there some Dion Phaneuf news that day? Anyway.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of free agent news on free agent day.
Yeah.
So let's get into the signing. So Maple Leafs, I'd say the biggest splash of free agency this year was they signed Chris Tanev to a 6-year, $4.5 million contract to be the unquestioned best right side defenseman the Maple Leafs and Morgan Riley have had in, I don't know,
20 years?
12, 15. Okay, yeah, 20 years. Sure, go for it. We've been hearing about Chris Tanev to the Maple Leafs since like 2015 probably. And here we are 9 years late, but how are you guys feeling about that signing? That is the move. That's Brad's move. We talked about it last pod. What do you think?
I feel you almost have to split it up into two things. There's how do you feel about Chris Tanev as a player? And then we can get into how do you feel as Chris Tanev's contract? Because I know we talked briefly on Chris Tanev just because I don't know how the rumors got out there. Somehow it was a common knowledge that the Leafs were going after Chris Tanev before July 1st, the official opening day. No, it can't be tampering. But anyways, we said, like, on one hand, Chris Tanev makes the Leafs better in the short term, but he is a 34-year-old defenseman, same age as TJ Brody. Maybe we're just, like, too recently scarred. But I don't know. Coming around since then, we thought, like, maybe in my opinion, we may have been a little hard on Chris Tanev. Maybe I was looking for something to get excited again, build up my hope after.
Well, I mean, make no mistake. Like, Steven, you said, he's the best right-handed defenseman we've had in 20 years. Like, this is not a bad player we're acquiring. You can take $4.5 million of cap space and waste it on Klingberg, and then you literally get nothing for it. Mm-hmm, so, like, in no way is this, like, a wasted $4.5 million. This year, our defense is better than it was last year, purely because Chris Tanev was on it. Like, he's going to make our top pair of Morgan Riley excellent. They're going to take all the heavy minutes, which is lighten the load for everybody else. Like, as soon as you add something like that at the top of your roster, it just bumps everyone down a notch. I don't think you can, when you say you could split this into two things, talk about Tanev without talking, I don't think you could do that, Tim. Like, I just think that's an impossible task, because obviously he's a good player now, but we signed the guy for 6 years until he's 40 years old. Like, that's a massive part of the story here. I don't think you could just discount that out.
I feel it's a different part of the conversation, because on one hand, like, we look at last year, we brought in Ryan Reeves, and, like, obviously we had a lot of opinions about him, and so there's the looking at the fit. Is Chris Tanev the right player for us to add? And then you can say, okay, was the cost worth it? Because often in unrestricted free agency, you pay a premium for that, right? Like, you often an extra year, often an extra million. So I first I was gonna say, like, is he the right fit for the Leafs? Do you guys agree?
Yes.
He's absolutely the right fit. He's exactly what we needed for right now for 34-year-old Chris Tanev. That's not the Chris Tanev I'm worried about.
You heard it here first. Ryan and Steven think the Leafs are winning the Cup next year because of Chris Tanev.
That's what they think by doing this deal. They're like, to me, we'll get into some of the other moves like Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. But like, to me, they're saying our goal is to win the Cup in the next 3 years. And after that, we will be bad. That's kind of where I'm at here.
Yeah, but $4.5 million isn't going to sink your team one way or the other. Like, if Chris Tanev is unable to play in the NHL at any level in 3-4 years, then sure, this $4.5 million might be a bit of an anchor. But if he's able to play in the NHL, or he's so banged up that he's on LTIR, this $4.5 million is not going to sink us. So I'm a lot less stressed about it for that reason. Or like, he retires or something like that. But even if he's just not a top pairing defenseman in 3 years, even like $4.5 million is just not going to sink you. Like really, there's no way. There's almost no reason you should be able to sign a top pairing defenseman for $4.5 million in free agency, regardless of his age. Like, it's pretty remarkable that we're going to have that for even just this season. When you look at what a lot of the other guys who the Leafs were in on, but a lot of the other defensemen ended up signing for money wise.
I mean, we might be paying our bottom pairing defenseman $3.5 million this year. So
well, Nikita Zadorov signed
$5 million, right?
Yeah, and he's going to be playing on probably Boston's third pair. Like that's where he's at. So
I think you're right, Steven. I think that this upcoming season, he's going to be valued at more than $4.5 million. We're getting him in a deal this season, and maybe the season after that as well. And that's why, like, the cap hit was as low as it was, because you're buying years 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like, when he's 38 years old, he's not going to be on your top pair with Morgan Riley. Like, he's going to be on your third pair, and then it's going to be for like a few years. I see a lot going around where everyone's like, oh, like, wink wink, nudge nudge, Chris Tanev isn't actually going to be here for years 5 and 6 or 4, 5, and 6. Like, we'll Robert Island him, or we'll trade him, or just LTIR or something. Like, it seems everyone's just like, yeah, it's probably what's going to happen. You don't know that. Like, that's a hope and a prayer that he's going to be there. Like, sure, he's had some injury problems, but like, he might just have to be sticking around. You might have to buy him out. Like, look at what the Edmonton Oilers do with Jack Campbell and how sucky their future is now that they had to buy that out. Like, this is a lot of money we're talking about. Maybe the cap it's going up and it's not as bad as I think, but it's a lot.
Well, Patrick Marleau, right? We said like, oh, maybe he won't play that last year. He was insisting on playing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who. Maybe it was more of like a '90s, early 2000s thing, right? Like, who is the guy who just retired and left a whole bunch of money on the table before his contract's were up, right? Like, in this economy, Chris Tanev's leaving $4.5 million on the table to go play golf in a couple years. He'll be in a Maple Leaf sweater, and maybe he'll be good. I mean, there's plenty. Mark Giordano was pretty good until like a year ago, and he was probably 39 or something like that. So
TJ Brody, when he was like 32, he was great. When he was 33, it's like, uh-oh. And then he's 34 this past year, and it's like, this guy can't even play in the NHL. And we're getting Tanev now. He's 34 now. Like, this is a young NHL.
I like the deal.
He can't play in the NHL. He got a 2x3 from Chicago.
Would have you given him that deal?
No, I wouldn't have.
Not a chance. TJ Brody.
Oh, yeah, I saw that today. They signed a lot of guys. It's funny, these defensemen, like, it's a weird market because you're overpaying, and it feels like a lot of these guys are so old, and it's like, what's the solution? Oh, the solution is draft some. Like, why do the Leafs have like no, up and comers besides Timothy Liljegren and Morgan Riley through the system like ever?
Niemala.
But that's why it's crazy that we were able to get a top pairing defenseman in free agency. Like, it's cool.
It's kind of a tricky one. It's a tricky one to get excited about or not get excited about. Overall, like, I know I'm just going to be driven up the wall with him a few years from now. But, like, he's objectively going to be great this year. He better be. If he's not great this year, then holy cow, are we in trouble. But I'm expecting him to be a great defenseman this year. He was coming off a really good year this past year. Like, the most recent data shows that he was... And, I mean, I was reading some stuff about him. Like, he's excellent at moving the puck, which is something we desperately need. He's great at exiting the zone with possession. He'll clear the front of the net. He'll play penalty kill. Like, we need that. Like, he checks every single box for us. It's just how many years is he going to be checking those boxes? And maybe I'm being too harsh. I don't think I am. I think that it's crazy we gave a guy who's 34 a 6-year deal, but it is what it is.
Well, when we were on the pod last, I don't remember everything that we were saying because we just kind of ramble, but I felt like it was a lot of Tanev talk. And when we were saying like, oh, it feels like this is what Brad's going to do, I don't know that one person on this pod was suggesting 6 years.
We were afraid that he was going to get 8 years. They traded for his rights.
Well, but I'm saying at this time last week when we were podding, right, we're like, what are the Leafs, like we're going to sign Tanev and it's going to be a 4-year deal. And maybe we were all expecting a little bit more money because, again, you're signing guys expected to be in your top pair. But, like, yeah, it just wasn't expected 6 years. But maybe this is going to work out because the Leafs have found and tons of other teams have found ways to just piss away $4.5 million on a guy that, like, you can't do anything with. You're going to be able to do something with Chris Tanev as long as he's healthy. So,
yep.
It's like if you were given the choice between the $4.5 million by 6 years or $6.75 million for 4 years, what would you pick?
The
same amount of money for Chris Tanev.
Jeez, I don't know, Tim. I don't like either of those.
Well, you couldn't do the 6. If we did the 6.75 this year, like that would be all the Leafs' money. Now, if we made,
it was probably another team that was offering like a 5x5 or something that we had to beat it, and we could only to get it down to 4.5. We offered the 6 years. I don't know. It's tricky. The problem is that we already don't really have a young team back there. Like Morgan Rielly is on the wrong side of 30. Tano's on the wrong side of 30. OEL is on the wrong side of 30, and like those are all our best defensemen. How old is Jake McCabe? He's probably around 32, isn't he?
Yeah,
Jake McCabe. Wrong side of 30.
Wrong side of 30. So that's like our whole
Tim Allison.
Or the right side of 30 if you want talking about wisdom.
So like Timothy Liljegren is like our future. 2 years now we got him for. Like who knows what he's going to be. I don't even know. Is he even in our lineup right now? Like we got a 6'7" monster back there. Is he even going to make the roster? I don't know.
Simon Benoit.
That's
age
right.
25.
All
Little
right.
baby with Liljegren.
Benoit and Liljegren, they're the future. And
I'll tell you this
Nutella.
about Tanev. I know he's 34, and some people are roasting him for his age. All the images you see of him, he's got no helmet on. He's doing these warm-ups. His hairline is excellent. Like, you don't see a single gray in there. It's long, flowing locks. I am really excited to finally see him in a Leaf sweater. I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this pod, understand what I'm saying, that like we have been talking about Chris Tanev coming to the Maple Leafs since like 2015. It's been that long. So
he was a popular, trade Nylander for Tanev, trade Marner for Tanev, trade a first round pick for, anyways.
So if we've done this pod so many years now, it's a free agency. It's either you like it or you don't like it. Go on record. Do you like it or you don't like it?
I think I like it.
Ryan?
Here's the problem. You're looking at it in a vacuum. We added so many defensemen, which like is making us better. I would like to see more goals next year.
Well, we'll get into that. But this signing, you like it. You can
As
say you don't like the other ones later because of that. But like if the Leafs only did this, you like this.
As a whole, no. It's I just hate. I wanted someone younger or something. Like I would have taken Roy or I don't know. I just hate those back years. I'm not convinced like the rest of the world that we'll just magically get out of them like we did with Murray or Klingberg or Robidar or any of these guys. Like it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet and trade away a first round pick to move the contract or buy it out and be stuck with it another dozen years. Like it just seems so messy to me. I don't like it.
I'm on record saying I like it. So there you have it. The two guys that are on the wrong side of 30 are siding with the guy that's on the wrong side of 30.
All of us are over 30, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait, when was Ryan born? I was there. We'll get into it later. How old is Ryan? That doesn't matter. Okay, so next big signing, let's talk about Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Guys, if this was 2017, and we landed Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson in free agency, we would be so pumped. But the Leafs signed Stanley Cup champion Oliver Ekman-Larsson to, I don't even know, what's the deal? Couple of years? 3 years?
4 years, $3.5 million a year.
Speaking of the old guys,
so
he is 32.
What do you think, Steven?
Well, he's bounced around the league like crazy lately. I mean, when he was at his best on Anaheim, he was awesome. And, watching him on Florida in the playoffs, like, I kind of think you're getting a guy at the right time.
Arizona.
No, but he was on.
Oh,
well, I'm saying like he bounced around. Like, he was so great in Arizona. He was so bad with Vancouver. I mean, I think he was bought out before Florida picked him up.
Yeah.
And he found his groove, and he's bringing something different to the Maple Leafs offensively. My expectations of this signing are a little bit lower just because he's not going to be playing as high in the lineup. So I don't know. I'll say that I don't like this signing for the reason Tim was getting at before, where I just think these dollars should have gone somewhere else. It's not like the Leafs lost in the playoffs last year because we couldn't stop pucks from going into our net, or really even the last couple years in the playoffs. And 7 seconds before, Tim, you sent it to the chat that the Leafs signed Ekman-Larsson, I was just saying, we don't need another expensive defenseman now. We need to get a forward. And then Tim's like, Leafs sign Ekman-Larsson. It's like the Leafs defense, I think, is so much better than it was last year. I know, Ryan, you were saying it's for sure better. I'm not sure how convinced you are that it's twice the unit it was last year. I really think it's going to be twice the unit that it was last year.
It's pretty head and shoulders above last year, 100%.
And this helps it, but this was the signing where that money spent on a forward would have, I think, made the team look a lot better on paper going into next season. So, it was.
I think the other problem is that Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a left-handed D, and so it's just like we have other left-handed D. I know Benoit. You can debate about, is he just a big body? What's his upside like? He's only 25, or you can say he's actually 25. Some people say people peak at 25.
I say you peak at 30.
Did you peak at 25, Tim? In any way?
No, I didn't start the Leafscast until a few years ago.
2021? I don't know.
I wasn't podcasting at 25, so I couldn't have peaked at then.
Ryan, what about you?
I think this is the worst of the pickups the Leafs made.
No. If you peaked at 25, Tim was still rambling on about whatever he's getting at. Okay, we'll get to you.
Oh, later. I'm sorry. Was I doing Leafs talk only? I'm sorry. I missed the memo of this podcast.
I just want to get a little.
I had a full beard at 25, so I was fine. I think that I actually agree with everything you said, Steven, that this is the one that it felt like this was never the plan. It was almost a backup when we didn't get the other D that we wanted. Probably wanted Zadorov, and he got priced out, and so we just all right, I guess we'll overpay for the recent Stanley Cup winner. That to me is what it is. It seems like, one, it's just too much money. This guy's probably going to be on our third pair. So a $3.5 million third pair guy, we already have Liljegren down there who makes more than he should be, so that's no good. And for 4 years, guys, he's over 30. This is the wrong side. 32 to 36 is ridiculous for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So it doesn't work for me. Again, year one, hopefully it's good. And the same thing we saw with TJ Brody. It could just fall off a cliff at any time. I'm excited for the offense that he brings. Similar to Tanev, we needed some defense who were able to move the puck. Last year at the deadline, we didn't really get that. We got Edmondson and Lyubushkin, and those aren't really puck-moving defensemen. They're big, stand in front of the net defensemen, which serve a purpose. They're good. But we had a hard time getting the puck out of our end, and having guys like Ekman-Larsson and Tanev will definitely help with that. It just seems like that's it. He's, I don't know. Maybe he'll play in the power play. I don't know if he'll take it from Riley. It just seemed like a lot of term for an old guy who will be at our third pair. I would have rather just seen Benoit. Let's keep Benoit up there.
Well, what I find kind of interesting about this year's free agency crop is so going back to when we extended Jake Muzzin or signed TJ Brody out of unrestricted free agency, and those guys got 4 or 5 year deals. That was their first UFA deal. Like that was bringing them from like their age 28 season to age 33, 34. And it was like, okay, these are the good years. Everyone we were looking at this year is all like, oh, they just turned 30 and we're heading to the back age. And so like, and maybe like, to be fair, it's like, this is why we're able to afford these guys. Like Oliver Ekman-Larsson wasn't making 3.5 at age 28.
What other team was offering him this though? Like, who are we bidding against? It just seems so expensive.
This is pretty well consensus kind of market rate for Ekman-Larsson. Like this is what he was going to get, partially because of like the Stanley Cup winner premium that gets put on there, partially because of pedigree, even after all these years. But
how much do you guys value that he's coming off of Florida and he just won a Stanley Cup? Like, do you value that a lot, or do you think that it's just like he's just one of the many parts that got him there? Or...
I don't value it as much as like I would if we were bringing in Brandon Montour or something like that. Somebody who maybe was a bigger part of it.
Patrick Kane, missed opportunity.
Maybe it's like he played.
You mentioned the pedigree though. That's the biggest concern to me because like when we're saying Tanev coming off an excellent season, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson was bad enough to be bought out so recently, right? And,
well, he had a ridiculous contract.
And then he goes to Florida, who was a wagon, and, you know, everyone there, I mean, all these guys that left and signed these gigantic deals, like, it was obviously a spot where it feels like you go there and your career is going to get back on track and you're going to figure it out. And now you're leaving that system and you're going somewhere else, and there's no Paul Maurice, and it's just concerning.
There's Craig Berube.
I wish that money would have gone to a different position. I don't know if that was the plan going into free agency this year, that like we're going to sign 7 defensemen, because that's what we ended up with, and we still have the same holes that we talked about a year ago this time after free agency.
I would say it's like the fact that he won the cup is nice, but I think even just the fact of having recent like 24 playoff games experience, that's significant. I think just to show like this guy knows what it takes. This guy is like seen what the champions do, seen what like teams that go far do, and I think like the fact that tell you the truth, I just look at the stat line, see he had 6 points and was +1 in 24 games. So it's like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but he was there. I think it's significant. Like thinking of like Jeff Skinner, I would have actually liked Jeff Skinner on our team. He's went to Edmonton now. Never played a playoff game in his life.
1,000 NHL games.
That's
crazy.
A playoff game.
And they'll miss the playoffs next year.
Maybe.
Well, I saw
they have
this.
Corey Perry as well. So
Yeah, I saw that meme, right? It's like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object between Perry always going to the Cup final and Skinner never making the playoffs.
Was Oliver Ekman-Larsson the captain in Arizona, or am I just imagining that?
I think he was. Like he was. Vancouver made this big trade package with swapping all these contracts down to back and forth, and then they basically had to give him a big contract. So
all right, I never mind bringing in some captain material. Good leadership.
Back to the defenseman though, just in like the idea that if we even needed Ekman-Larsson, like I still think Cade Weber is going to be a guy that's going to play for the Maple Leafs at some point this season on like a third pairing role. He's gigantic. He's a defensive defenseman.
Not now though. Like I don't even know. Are we going to have a spot for Liljegren even? Like we haven't even talked about Hakanpää yet. Like actually, there's a little bit about injuries and maybe he won't even play. But like we signed the guy for 2 years. Clearly, I think he'll play.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. You signed
Cade
him.
Weber's like the number 8 at best. Like that, and number 8s don't get a lot of ice time.
But I'm saying like if he were our 7 and we didn't have Ekman-Larsson, I'd be okay with that. Like it's just taking guys out who like I think could have a chance.
It's not even so. Like you still have Timmins down there.
Ryan's like
he's
all
so
our guys
far
are
down.
old. I'm like, hey Ryan, here's a guy that's not old. He's like, he's not ready.
There's a difference between like 18-year-old rookie and 34 to 36-year-old Tanev.
Cade Weber's probably like 24, 25 years old, coming off of a ton of college experience. He's a hoss.
I'm
saying he's a different kind of guy. He's different.
23 years old.
That's
okay, you're right.
I'm just saying, like, if the Leafs, I don't know that this Ekman-Larsson thing's just going to move the needle as much as like I know you guys are in agreement. Okay, I've said I don't like it. Ryan says.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Tim
It's
says
2 for 2.
I don't like it, but I think it is a conversation we had about, like, this is a shift of methodology from what we've seen from the Leafs managing in the past. Like,
And none of us like it.
Well, here's the consensus, or what was Kyle Dubas's mantra is: you pay big for the big impact players, you pay big for your stars, and fill out around the edges with your replacement level players. So it means your contracts, you have a lot of $10 million contracts and a lot of $1 million contracts. And the idea is that your impact guys will make an impact, and the rest are replaceables who don't overpay. And where that's got us in the past 5 years is that you shut down 2 guys and your team is done. You have 2 injuries, your team is done. And so what Brad Treliving has done, obviously he still has those impact guys at the top, but we have a lot more of those $2, $3, $4, $5 million players. So it's like what we've done by signing Oliver Ekman-Larsson is almost added that layer of redundancy in there. Where say, instead of a $7 or $8 million defenseman, we have Chris Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Is it going to be more exciting on a night to night? Maybe not. Is it going to hedge our bets and say one of them is going to be sufficient going into the playoffs and is going to be on? I don't know if it's going to be enough or not, but like it is a shift.
It's a shift, and none of us like it. All right, let's talk about the big boy.
Hakanpää, Yanni Hakanpää.
That is a fun name to say. Hakanpää.
I hope we get to say it. It doesn't sound like he's going to be actually playing for the Maple Leafs.
That's such a weird rumor. Like, was it Simmons that released this report that, like, it turns out Hakanpää had this knee injury, he's never going to play again?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know. I mean, I haven't really looked into it. All I know is that I hope the Leafs were aware of that. The only thing that gives me pause that the Leafs were idiots and didn't is that they made basically the exact same mistake with Klingberg last year, where it's like, this is a guy who has a lot of injury problems and who knows what he's going to be doing. And the Leafs were like, yeah, we'll give him $4.5 million. And turns out, this guy actually can't even skate anymore. And he played like 20 games. All of them sucked. And he didn't play the rest of the season. And so now he'd commit 2 years to Hakanpää, which is like, why are you committing 2 years to a guy who you don't even know will play anymore? Unless if the Leafs either, this rumor is false and he will play, or the Leafs are idiots. And I'm not sure which of those two is true at this point.
He does only make $1.5 million, so it's not like, I don't know. I'll give the Leafs the benefit of the doubt that they did their due diligence.
After last year with Klingberg, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, Tim?
I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
We re-signed Matt Murray.
Is this possible? It's like a Moneyball situation where you're signing the former catcher to play first base. Like, is there something he can do hockey-wise that doesn't involve that knee?
He's coming for Bobby Hastings' job.
He's 6'5" every night.
You just stand in front of the net. You don't have to move.
Even though I'm making fun, I actually think this is a fine sided, because I think worst case scenario is he just doesn't play and he's on LTIR. The money's gone anyway. Like, who cares?
Look, all you have to see is that little RD next to his name and say, finally.
But he's huge. It's like, it reminds me of what you said last year, Steven, when we got Ryan Reeves, where we just like, Ryan Reeves was just like the best he is at what he does, and who cares if he sucks at all these other things? Like, we got him for this reason. And Hakanpää's got to be like a foot taller than anyone else that was on free agency that year. Like, he's like 225 pounds, like just this massive defenseman, and you can just see that being so effective. Like, I think of what Joel Edmondson was in the playoffs for us last year. Like, if he could be healthy, I could see it being well worth $1.5 million compared to like the $3 million you're paying Liljegren or Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like, it seems like good value for your money if he's healthy, and if he's not healthy, it's gone anyway. So I'm okay with the signing.
I don't know. Like, when I heard they signed him, it's like, I wonder if Liljegren's gonna be out the door. Mm-hmm. Like, I think when Brad Treliving and Craig Berube say like, okay, what do we want from a third pairing defenseman? I think they want one like Hakanpää rather than what Liljegren does, and they say, he's half the price. I wonder if we see Liljegren going out the door in the next couple weeks. Maybe Brad's taking the summer off.
Liljegren is taking the average age of our decor down by 4 years. Just him being there. We need him.
Do you think the signing, Liljegren to the extension that essentially just walks him into UFA helps or hurts his chances of getting traded? Because I got less suspicious they're going to trade him after they signed him, because I think the team that's committing to him would have wanted to sign him to the deal that they wanted.
I think they just didn't want the uncertainty of the arbitration hearing. Like, oh, yeah, sure, what you're going to get, what you're not going to not. Now it's like, here's the number. We can live with it or we can't, and go from there. Overall, I think that's fine for what he got. I remember you guys maybe were hoping that I didn't remember that you guys thought he was going to get a contract starting with 1. $3 million is maybe a little high.
It's very high. It's very high, Tim. You could say it.
He's a 4-5. He could be a 4-5.
He's a 6-7, Tim. He never even plays in the playoffs for us. He's a fringe NHL defenseman at this point that we hope will become a 4-5. He's a 6-7 right now.
He played 6 games
Tim,
in the playoffs.
I don't even know if he's going to be on our lineup. If Hakanpää's healthy, he's not there.
Well, that's only because Brad keeps signing defensemen. We haven't even talked about Dakota Mermis.
It was a nonsensical. One of these, I have no idea what you just said.
What are you talking about?
One of these defensemen that we signed, we should not have signed. Like we'll talk about all these individually and say we like it or we don't like it. But we signed too many, and we didn't sign enough forwards. We're still missing a 3C. I'm sure we'll get there. But right now we have 7 quality NHL defensemen. And Connor Timmins and Stevens College boy. Like, we just have a wealth of cap space to our decor.
Guys,
that's not there.
You're out of date. Today, Brad signed another NHL defenseman, Dakota Mermis. He played 47 games with Minnesota last year. He's 30 years old.
What the heck is the contract?
Just leagueman contract 1 year.
All right.
If Hakanpää is the best last name signed in free agency, Mermis is the worst. That's for sure.
I haven't seen the scouting report on his hairline, but we'll get back to you on that.
It stood out to me because you get all these close-ups of him and just like it's dark and it's even. Let's talk about the forwards, okay?
You just like watching Willie's flow.
I'm fully support the Leafs wearing helmets in lineups in their warm-ups and not getting a head injury for nothing.
All right.
All right, moving on to the forwards, where there's not as much to talk about as we would like.
Well, so Max Domi re-signs, Tyler Bertuzzi leaves. Let's talk about Max Domi. So Domi stays home on a 4-year deal by $3.75 million, and he put out a funny video on his social media, The Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving, and it was. The passion is staying home. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let's talk about it.
I mean, it's funny because he made a joke along with it. It's like he's just been waiting so long to actually like sign a long-term deal after a couple like 1-year, 2-year deals. It's like finally I can actually
plant some roots,
buy a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I mean, what's interesting about Max Domi is, like, we saw it last year, right? Very, like, almost a tale of... I don't remember what the turning point was mid-season, him and Bertuzzi. It was that Morgan Riley suspension.
It was.
But it's like, the first half of the season, he was so bad. Like, offensively, defensively, just not clicking at all. Maybe I was just adapting to the new team, new city, new coach, or whatever. But then after that... he was like, oh, he can actually play. He has, like, the grit, the tenacity. He has the playmaking. Still no defense, but, that's fine. And then he took, I forget who it was that was injured or whatever. Way too many injuries. And he took another step when he was, like, actually playing center. And it was like, this guy is legit. So...
well, he centered when Matthews was out in the playoffs. He centered our top line with Marner and looked good doing it.
He looked really good.
Yeah.
So you like it, Tim?
And that's and I was gonna say, even just like he's 29, signing for 4 years, that's a reasonable term and age. I could live with that.
I think this is
overall. I'd say I think I like this Domi signing.
I think this one's a slam dunk, man. I think you're keeping a bit of a Swiss Army knife. If there's one thing like I'm confident. Like he can do it's hang in a top 6 role on the wing or at center. Like, you put him with some good players, and he's going to contribute in a Leaf sweater. We know that. I know it's like not the funnest thing to say. It's like, yeah, play him with the $11 million guys and they'll be good. But he was really good. He did the Marner thing really well alongside Matthews when I don't remember if it was Marner was out or he was demoted in the lineup. But, like, he did the Marner thing, and then he was running that top line, and he's got the passion. He's really pumped to be here. I think it's awesome. You mentioned that we still don't have a 3C. I don't know that Domi is that. So, like, that part of it isn't great, but I think you had to keep him around. So I'm really pumped. It feels like he's a member of the Leafscast for some reason because he just loves the Leafs so much. So it's like we got a Leafscast member on the team.
Yeah,
I don't know. We're all living.
I mean, before it actually happened, I didn't know what I would think about the Domi signing for term, and like it just terrified me in that we had no idea what he was going to be with how horrible he was in the first half of the season. After it happened, though, I'm kind of thinking about it, and I think I've come around on the Domi signing. It feels like of all of our players, he's the kind of guy who could outperform this contract. He's just coming off of a year where he's just getting paid $3 million. And I feel like what he did at the second half of the season last year, he was outperforming his $3 million contract. So do I think Max Domi could outperform a $3.75 million contract? Yeah, he could. And if he doesn't, then I don't think he'll go back to how horrible he was for the first half of the season. So worst case scenario, he's like a $3 or even a $2.75 million player. And like, I think for a player like Max Domi, where we're short on offense, we're short on players who could play center, it's probably worth the risk. He does have the passion. It was fun seeing him in the playoffs. It is always fun seeing a guy with Domi on the back of his sweater playing for the Maple Leafs. So I think I've come around on it, and I also like this signing. I actually would say I like it so much, it might be my favorite of the things that was done on July 1st.
The one concern I have about Domi is that the fit. Like, Max Domi is someone who, yes, he plays great with, like, the top-end players, but he does need some, like, he doesn't fit on a defensive line, right? And then, like, Leafs of the past few years, at least, that's been the bottom six forwards. And so, like, if Domi gets the point where he can't keep up with our top six lines, what do you do with them? Like,
that needs to change, though, right? Like, you say that's what it's been, but, like, having a third and fourth line which cannot score goals has been a problem for us for the past few years in a row now.
Well, goal scoring has been a problem, so
yeah,
anything that changes.
But you have to think, like, Ryan Reeves wasn't even on our team in the playoffs or at the end of the season. This is year 2 of 3. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just kind of 30 games in the season. Like, bring him in every now and then, 13th forward kind of thing. And we get a revamped David Kampf-based fourth line that's like your defensive shut him down. And we get a third line that could score again. And you put Domi on that third line and could do something. Or you put him up there with Matthews and Marner and he could definitely do something. Like, to me, the fit is actually something Domi has going for him. We don't have a lot of players like that. And we need players like Domi to plug into this lineup because we're not getting goals elsewhere.
I wonder, though, if Domi's spot is alongside Matthews. We don't know what Berube is going to think, but, like, he was doing it. He was doing it in Marner's absence, and you just wonder if Marner gets moved somewhere down the lineup, whether it's to the second line, someone's on the third line, Marner's driving the third line. Be interesting.
It just seems so hard. Like, the number one takeaway for me this free agency, which I hate is the number one takeaway, is just that we still don't have a third line center. I'm so tired of not having a third line center. And we're going to go through the same problems that we had last year. Maybe it's something that we're just going to address at the trade deadline. I don't know. But if Domi, I kind of like him better in the first or second line. Like, I think he provides something up there that we don't have a lot of wingers that could play up that high up in the lineup. But I just don't know who our third line center is going to be. Like, Holmberg? Is Kampf going to be our third line center? Like, it's just not the options after Domi, unless if you're moving Nylander over, which probably won't happen. It's just not great. We're very shallow.
Yeah, and like, I mean, we can get talking into it later, but like, Brad Treliving probably isn't done. Like, the forwards are worse than last year.
Yeah.
And we had trouble scoring last
Yeah.
year. Granted, some of that is the power play, so maybe like you can point to the coach as being the difference. I don't know if we have many. Well, I guess Canada's a bit of a puck-moving defenseman, but
Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson will help with offense. Like, they'll help us get the puck out. They'll help us even in the offensive zone. Like, even though they're defensemen, they'll definitely help in that regard, but not more than what Bertuzzi was able to provide, and he's gone now. Like, I don't even know who's going to be up there, and you might get some internal improvements. Matthew Nye should be better, right? We won't have Robertson probably.
Bobby McMahon.
Bobby McMahon, yep. Although he was injured in the playoffs, that guy's useless.
Well, so
yeah. What do you guys think? Does Brad release a statement about Nick Robertson, kind of implying that, like, oh yeah, we understand his frustration, but like we're gonna have a role for him here. There's opportunity. Do you think Nicky Rob forces his hand and gets dealt, or is it just a lover's quarrel?
Players always get dealt when they ask for a trade.
Well, not always.
They're all whiny babies.
Not always. What's his face? The guy that we hate on Boston requested a trade.
Jake DeBrusque?
Yeah. You'll have to be more specific than that, Steven.
The white guy, the skater.
I think Robertson's still with the Leafs. His problem is that he's 22. He's still pretty young, but he just has no leverage at all. He's an RFA. He hasn't definitively shown. Like, yes, he hasn't had that consistent a showing, but it's not like he's had no opportunity at all. And so it's like I think he sticks around. I think he's just gonna have to prove it.
But as soon as we hired Craig Berube as our coach, the number one players we're thinking of, it's just like, shoot, how is a guy like Nicky Robb, a guy like Mitch Marner, a guy like Timothy Liljegren, like, how are these guys gonna fare under Craig Berube? They're just not Craig Berube type players. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nicky Robb, so we hired him, that all the free agents we're bringing in are all 100 pounds heavier than he is. And he's just like, you know what? I'm not going to get a fair shot here. Like, Brad sorts by height and weight, and so does Berube. So.
But, like...
Well, I mean, like, Berube is, like, yes, he's maybe a more stereotypical, like, a tough guy. Obviously, that's who he was as a player. But even the St. Louis team that won the Cup in 2019, it wasn't all 6'5" guys. Like, you think Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Braden Shen, like, all those guys are 6 foot, less than 200 pounds.
Do you really know those guys' height and weight, Tim?
I looked it up right now. Cap friendly. Thank you. So helpful. Rest in peace.
3 more hours, he has it.
Yep.
Nicky Robb scored like 15 goals for the Maple Leafs, and I think he's being
tough to replace.
I think he's being an absolute idiot if he's just trying to leave town right now. Like, how is he not looking at it and saying, like, I can make this third line, right? At least. How is he not saying that? Yeah, he played a lot of games for us last year. I think he probably should have played more than he even did. I think it's frustrating that he's saying he wants to leave, and I'm not very convinced that the Leafs are going to do it. I think, what's different maybe with, like, his situation to some of the other ones is, like, nobody in the front office drafted him at this point, right? Nobody's married to him besides maybe Shanahan. But I would hope that he sticks around, and if he doesn't, I hope that the return is something interesting.
I think the return won't be anything interesting. If he gets traded, it'll be for like nothing really.
It'll be another project player.
I would be very happy if he sticks around. I feel like he's been a special player to us on the Leafscast. It would be sad to see him go.
Like, it's kind of nuts because when we talk about, like, other guys that have requested trades out of Toronto, like Ilya Mikheyev, like older in their career.
Oh, that's a good point. He requested it. He didn't get moved.
Yeah, he didn't get moved, and I don't know.
Hands.
Yeah, it's tough to know. Like, I think we'd know better how this was going to get handled if somebody like Dubas, that we knew how they handled it, right, was in the office, but we don't. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed with the trade. Like, obviously, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I would like, if you hear the story, like, oh, he's going to put his head down and work his butt off to make the team. It's like, oh, or are you just gonna blame your circumstances?
From what we know of Nicky Robb, he's like he'll put his head down and work. Like,
that's what we thought.
I think he will. Well, you could do that, but still say I want a trade. Like, requesting a trade isn't against the rules.
I'm so surprised that he feels like it hasn't worked. He scored 15 goals. Like, that's not Nothing.
Maybe he thinks he should be on the second line. I don't know.
It's crazy. And
announcing it to the world's not cool, though.
He's in charge of that, though, right? Like, he can be that guy. We'll see.
All right.
It's so funny.
Should we talk about goalies?
Yeah, because like that's the end of forward talk. It's like that's all that happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say this.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, the fact that that's all that happened means that, like, to begin free agency, we had holes at like scoring, winners, center depth, a few D, and a backup goalie. And we knew going into it we weren't going to be able to fill the holes. We just didn't have the cap space. And it looked like the holes that Brad chose not to fill was specifically 3C, as well as really like any other scoring depth. Like, forwards are weak. And I think last year going into the trade deadline, we knew that the number one priority was going to be, let's get some defensemen here. This year it's probably going to be forwards. So I mean, we don't really know what our team's going to look like come this next playoff run, but we know where the most likely holes are going to be.
I mean, our draft capital next year, we have a second round pick and then our 5, 6, and 7.
That's why we're holding on to Nicky Robb so he can trade him at the deadline.
And there's always Fraser Minton and Easton Cowan and some other.
Easton Cowan. We haven't talked about Easton Cowan yet. Think he makes the roster next year? Oh no, we did. We talked about this last pod.
Yeah, let's move on to something else for you.
Well, so let's talk about the back end, the puck stoppers.
Anthony Stolarz.
I think it's Stolarz.
Gonna have to start raising the height of these stalls. All these guys, like 6'5" is the new like average height of the Leaf players.
So also coming off of a cup win, I think he's about 30. He is, in my opinion, a backup goalie. I've heard some people saying that he could challenge for a number one spot over Joe Woll. We'll see, but I think the Leafs are bringing him in to be that. And so between that, Joe Woll's contract extension, which actually doesn't even kick in this year, and bringing back Matt Murray, which we'll get to, the Leafs are committing a lot less money this year to the goaltending position than they have in previous seasons. What do you think?
I mean, what worries me about Stolar is that he's coming off of the best defensive team in the NHL. Like, you could put a bag of pucks back there, and they're going to make at least like a .915 save percentage.
100%
so
agree.
I'm not sure what to make of Stolar. It'll be interesting to see. I do like it that it's 2 years, right? 2 years at $2 million or something. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So like, that seems pretty good. Like, that's better than a Martin Jones or something like that. You know, like, and it's the kind of guy that maybe he could. Maybe we could get a good tandem thing going here. Like, maybe he's going to exceed expectations. I don't know. He did have pretty good numbers with Florida, but again, they're a little skewed. So I like the signing. I think that we needed, after we gave Wall the number or the money that we're giving him, we're not looking for like a number one. We're not looking for a Marchand, although apparently we were. We're looking for a backup to come back in. And of all the other backups that went, the contracts and the term that they went for, I think that we probably got the best deal on ours. So I think it was good.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with it is like the most games he started in a season, 28 a couple years ago, 27 with Florida last year. These are not starter numbers or barely even 1B numbers. Like, those are backup numbers.
Well,
right?
Joseph Wall's numbers are backup numbers, and he's going to be our starter. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so we'll see if these guys stay healthy. If they don't, Matt Murray, he's still around.
Yeah, that one's nuts. So he signs a 1 year like $895 deal, right? $895.
Yeah. 75.
And it's pretty wild that he did that. He must really enjoy being in the Leafs organization and being in Toronto, because you think like a guy like him. Not to say that there's going to be a bunch of teams like banging at his door. We don't know that, but like you just think he'd have the dog in him a little bit to be like, I want to start somewhere. I want to have a chance, right? Kind of feels like he's ready to wind it down.
I wonder if he's going to start like 15 games for us this year. I think he'll start more than the average number 3 goalie. Like, it'll be like 40 games or like even 35 games for Wall, 25 games for Stolar, and Murray will get the rest.
Hey, but then you're going to have like waivers problems. Well, I guess
no,
like
we're under the cap right now. We got a couple millions laying around.
Well, not if we have 10 defensemen on that.
We did just sign another defenseman. What was his name again, Tim?
Dakota Mermis.
Dakota.
Maybe he's coming off of a situation where like his contract and cap hit like was a disadvantage to him getting to move around to different teams, and he's like, just make me flexible. Let's just play some hockey, and I made a lot of money. Everything's gonna be okay. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, like with Murray, it's like Leafs have probably world-class facilities and doctors and such, and so it's like these guys worked with him for like a year trying to get healthy again, and almost basically got him here, right? Was he actually on the bench as backup? I think he was activated.
No, he was never back.
But he was.
He had a stall, but that was as close as he got.
He had a stall.
Okay, so the Leafs though they sign Stolars and Matt Murray for essentially the same amount of money that we were paying Samsonov last year. Now Samsonov signs with Vegas on like a 1 year, $1.9 million. But would you guys have rather just kept Samsonov at the same money, or maybe even a little less, rather than had these two kind of like devil you know versus devils you don't?
At the end of the day, there was definitely a stink about Samsonov by the end of the year. You know what I mean? Like, it was over. And sometimes you just got to move on. I could have said the same thing about Matt Murray, and here he is coming back. But I'm not surprised that they moved on from Samsonov. And yeah, take the devil you don't know instead of the one you do.
Roll the dice. Yeah, no, I think it, like Ryan said, it's just, it was over. It was time. Just not quite consistent enough. He had his high points. It was fun to see him make his return to, I mean, before his run back in after being waived, like he was barely an NHL goaltender.
Yeah, as bad as Domi and Bertuzzi were, Samsonov was worse.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that part.
Worse.
I didn't forget about that part when I posed the question.
Yeah, he was really bad.
October was a long time ago. A long time ago.
Yeah.
Cool.
So overall, like looking at this team though, if this is the team that we ice on day one, maybe that's not a fair question to Brad because more moves are probably coming. But what are you guys thinking? Playoffs again? More optimistic than last year? We haven't even talked about the other teams in the Atlantic. But
go ahead, Steven.
I think I'm honestly a little bit less optimistic than I was last year. Just like when it's really because we just didn't add it forward. Like when I think of what's let us down so many years in a row, it's been, forwards not being able to get it done in the playoffs. And like when I realistically think about who's left, right? Because like by not signing somebody else, you're just continuing to say like, all right, you 4 or 5 guys need to go. And if you don't, we're going to lose. And if you ask me, do I think John Tavares is going to have a better year next year than this year? I'll say no. If you ask me, is Willie Nylander going to have a better year next year than this year? I'll probably say no. Can I expect Austin Matthews to score 69 goals this coming year? No. Mitch Marner might have a better year this year than next year. Next year than this year. You get what I'm saying.
It's his contract here. He's going to be like on pace for 180 points, and then we're going to sign him mid-year.
And so, but for that reason, it's just this massive glaring hole where like there were guys like Jeff Skinner, Tyler Toffoli, Victor Olofsson, guys you can just buy to get some goals on your team that we're signing defensemen that Ryan and I don't even know the names of. Tim's breaking it live on the pod, basically. For that, I'm really nervous about it. Like, we can't not have a 3C. You look at both the teams in the Cup final, they had 3Cs. We need to have a 3C. Sean Monahan signed for like $5.5 million in Columbus. I would have loved that. Like, that's what we needed, I think.
No,
Stamkos.
You wouldn't give Sean Monahan $5.5 million.
Tim hates everybody from Ontario. Stamkos, you hate him?
I would have taken Stamkos, but not at $8 million.
Yeah, that was rich. He got. I think
he had 42 goals last year.
I agree with what you're with everything you said, Steven, and that like all the players you said, is this player gonna get worse? Yeah, they probably are gonna get worse. I do actually think that I'm more optimistic about this season than I was at the beginning of last season. Even though as we were going through this, I'm like, don't like that one, don't like that one, don't like that one. But it was less so because of the 24-25 season. It was more because of like the 27-28 seasons that I was like, I don't know about these signings. And I think that the guys we all brought in, they should make our team better. And I'm excited about Craig Berube coming in as our coach. I think that will be a big deal. We'll see what Joseph Wall does. Like, even though we're paying less for our goaltending, Samsonov was such a mystery for what he gave us. There's no way we're having worse goaltending than we had last year. Like Samsonov
year
was
was
brutal, and then Wall got injured. We're like relying on Martin Jones to carry us through. I don't know. Even last year we've relived this so much, but like how horrible Ryan Reeves was for so long, and Domi and Bertuzzi and Klingberg. Like there's so many players for the first half of that year that were just completely awful. That there's no way that it's going to happen again like that. So I think that we'll be better this year than we were last year. I think we have a more complete team. In the past, like we've seen how hard it is to add a top 4 defenseman at the trade deadline. It's so expensive. Centers aren't cheap either, but I think we'll be able to address our center or forward depth at the deadline easier than we've had in previous years. So I think that we'll have a good team this year. We're definitely making the playoffs. Maybe we'll win a round. Like I wouldn't say that we're in the same tier as like a Colorado or a Dallas or I don't even know what Eastern team to bring up. Probably Boston will be winning the President's Trophy again. But I think we'll have a good team this year, and we'll see where it goes. Even though we do still have holes.
Time will tell. I think I'm aligned with Ryan on this one. Last year, like we've blocked it out of our mind, but we were bad for a very long time.
Yeah.
I really hope that we're not bad again this year. But it's like it could happen, right? Like Joe Wall and Stolarz get injured. Our boat anchor, our old defensemen are all anchors. Tavares is now like he can't walk, and Marner sits out the year because he's pouting because he's I don't know. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Domi has the passion. Brad has the passion.
They do have the passion. That's not wrong, Tim.
We have a new power play coach.
Do we have the passion?
We believe.
It is funny that
That's right. The power play can't be worse than it was last.
We mentioned these goalies, right? And like we signed these defensemen, like all right, we're gonna keep the pucks out of the net. Like we don't even have a full, season of like play under the belt of either of these goalies, really. And like, yeah, we are playing with fire a little bit there. It's it'll definitely be different though. Even though like I'm maybe sounding really pessimistic, like I am excited for different. I'm excited for a new coach, and go Leafs, go!
Go Leafs, go! We'll see what Brad does for the rest of the summer. Certainly, if Mitch Marner is extended, we'll do an emergency pod. If we ever figure out what else is going on at forward, if we're going to score any more goals at 3C, we'll do a pod. But
if the Leafs,
we'll enjoy the last moments of peace in our minds before the season starts up again in October.
If the Leafs sign 3 more defensemen, we will do an emergency pod. But if it's 4, no. If it's 2 or 1, no. 3 is the number. Look for that.
3's the one. All right.
I love it.
All right. Signing off.
Talk to you guys in
Good to be
October.
back.